Hello there everyone, Ryax here today to bring you Ranger main class guide. This one was asked about in my streams and also in some of the comment sections for the other two videos, so I wanted to work on this one. The issue with Ranger for me personally is that since I came from PSO2 Ranger, I only used Launcher, so this one for New Genesis was a little bit more difficult to understand, so this guide took me a little longer to go through and make sure that everything was working properly and that I understood it, so that way I could then give you my opinions and the knowledge that I have found for the class. Now, there have been some changes in the weapons, especially with the inclusion of the Straga series of weapons that Launcher actually has one of, so I'll make sure to include that in the showing of the 4 stars whenever we get to that point. But first, let's go ahead and show you what I recommend, in my opinion, for the proper skills to take as a Ranger main class. Alright, here I'm going to show you the main class abilities, and then a little bit different than my previous videos, I'm actually going to show you the subclasses right after I'm done showing you the main classes. So let's get started right here. So first off, obviously as a Ranger main class, the best ability you can have is Blight Rounds. So you're going to want to take maxed out Blight Rounds, and then Blight Rounds Reinforced, so that way it is more effective, lasts longer, as long as everyone is targeting the spot that you're supposed to be targeting. You obviously want Slow Landing for attack and charge. These will just help you stay in the air as you perform Photon Arts and also attack. Spread Shot is not necessary. This will only be useful if you're using the Assault Rifle as your main weapon. However, if you are using the Assault Rifle as your main weapon, picking up Spread Shot and Spread Shot Quick Getaway will assist you if an enemy gets close enough and you have it built up. You'll be able to use it to do a lot of damage and also try to escape your foe while being invincible at the exact time, invulnerable at the exact same time. Now, Rifle Grenadier is going to be your weapon action that I'll be speaking about later. If you intend to use Rifle as your main weapon, or even as a weapon that you swap to just for situational purposes, you're definitely going to want to pick this up, as it does a lot of damage to enemies who are getting too close to you. And then Slide Shot Advance to make sure that whenever you do trigger your weapon action, you are invulnerable for a state. Finally, we're going to take Sticky Bomb Quick Reload. This weapon action is for your launcher, and your launcher Sticky Bomb, instead of doing a lot of damage like the Rifle Grenadier does, actually refills your entire PP gauge, which is going to be useful depending on what you're using as in your terms of Photon Arts. I will go over this later as well. And then you're going to want Launcher Charge Group. This is useful just in the middle of combat. If you are running around an enemy with your launcher, but with your launcher normal attacks, having this just helps with your movement to make sure you're not standing still while you're using launcher. Now, as you can see, after taking all your actually good abilities, you're still left with 6 skill points. Now, there are like Bad Condition Reduction and Bad Condition Ward. Both of these don't really serve too much of a purpose, so what I'd suggest is just getting 1 point into reduction just so you have the 50% status element duration reduced, and then getting the rest into Bad Condition Ward just to resist, just to have the resistance there for the unit set that we're going to be talking about later. Now, for the subclasses you're going to want to be picking up here, first and foremost, in my opinion, I enjoy Force. As a subclass, what you would do with Force is pick up PP Conversion. You would actually max this out. You would grab PP Conversion Increase for the amount of charges you're going to have on it. PP Conversion is very useful even as a subclass because it gives you 600% natural PP recovery and it lasts for 30 seconds. This is very helpful for stages in which you just need a lot of recovery and you have a short amount of time. The best case to have this is when bosses go down. Even more useful now when Gigantrix enemies go down and you just need a lot of PP burst real fast. This is a very useful ability. And then again, you're going to want to pick up entirely of PP Recovery Boost just to make sure that you are constantly having the naturally high recovery. And then you're going to want to pick up Eradication PP Gain. So that way, every time the enemy is down near you while you're mobbing, you do get a certain amount of your PP recovered. This is actually really good for PSC burst areas, and I will be showing you that in the future as well. Now, you don't need to take anything else here, as nothing else benefits you as a subclass. However, if you do want the battle power, just put points into literally anything. Just throw your points around just to get them, so that way you can have your battle power at the level that it should be at. Next here we have is Gunner. With Gunner, you only want to pick up just attack, PP, recovery at max, and overwhelm at max, as nothing else in the Gunner tree affects you unless you're using Gunner as a main class. These two abilities help you with PP recovery whenever you're attacking, and then this one's for whenever you're attacking any enemy that's not a boss. While Gunner is useful for PP recovery, it's not quite as momentous as Force would be, but picking these two up as Gunner is pretty good for quick PP regen while attacking enemies. And then finally, we have Fighter here. Fighter is, in my opinion, the best DPS subclass that you can take. Being able to have defeat advantage so you do more damage against downed enemies, and having more PP recovery when those enemies are downed helps you against enemies like bosses during the urgent quests, as well as the Gigantrix enemy, which is the new enemy that is very time limited in how much you have to fight. If you're afraid of not doing enough damage to the Gigantrix in the short amount of time that you have, Fighter is a good way to make up the gap, since it gives you 5% potency every time the boss is down. Very helpful when it comes to doing more damage. Now, again, you could also be using Force to make sure that you don't run out of PP in these crucial moments, but Fighter is good for damage if you can control your amount of PP recovery that you're going to need for that. And then finally, this one is good, but this is mostly if you just want to build a tanky ranger, which is not really recommended, in my opinion. You could get all of Hunter Physique with all of Flash Guard. This will make you tankier and help you stay alive longer, but with Ranger, you have a lot of abilities with mobility, so you do not actually need to rely on Hunter for the sustain that it will actually be giving you. So, in my opinion, while it is an okay subclass, it is not a subclass that you're going to want in these situations. And then finally, we have Tekker. Do not recommend this as a subclass at all. The best parts of Tekker is main class only. So, do not recommend this. Do not pick this as a subclass unless you're using its talismans, and in that case, it's a whole different thing. But I will not go into that here. I am focused solely on the Ranger main class and its weapons only. Now we're going to move on to show you what 4 stars you should be aiming for in your build. Okay, everyone, so here we're going to do something a little bit different than what I normally do. I actually took notes and put them down in the bottom so that way y'all could follow along whenever I talk about the weapons, because I don't have the potential on my Vialto launcher, so I thought this would be a good way to just show you the potentials and the potencies on everything that we're going to be talking about. So we're going to start off with the Resurger series, which in my opinion is one of the better series overall. However, the only reason of that is because of its potential. That is Dynamo Unit. Dynamo Unit gives you potency increase as well as crit rate increase whenever you perform a successful sidestep. Now keep in mind that a successful sidestep is whenever you double tap in a direction or press X into an enemy attack. Making sure that you dodge the enemy attack with that action will actually trigger an audible cue, and your weapon will actually glow to resemble that you've actually activated Dynamo Unit. Now, Dynamo Unit starts off at 16%, but goes up to 18% and then 21%. I'm not going to include the 4th level of potential here, as that one requires you to actually obtain the cubes from leveling up your class at level 20. And I want to go over a guide that is more focused on the general player base and not just someone who's grinding the class out solely. Now, the next one we're going to be talking about is the Forces Rifle. Forces is the 4-star series that can only be obtained for the Assault Rifle, and its potential is actually going to be Bastion Unit. Bastion Unit starts off at 18%, which is actually higher than the Resurger potential that you can actually obtain, and it also comes with a barrier that gives you damage resistance while at max HP. Now, this is where the argument steps in with the Resurger series. As you can tell, Forces has 2% more potency than the Resurger does at base. the 15% crit rate that you get on Resurger adds an average of about 3 to 5 potential throughout its entire use, and if you're able to keep it consistently up, it will outperform both the Force's rifle and the Vialto launcher. However, when it comes to simply using rifle, if you don't have a Resurger rifle, Forces is okay to use as well. It does also make you tanky, which can save you from hard-hitting attacks, especially from the Gigantix enemies. Now, it starts off at level 1 with 18%, then level 2 20, and finally at 23. This is really good numbers for potency, just slightly above Resurger. Next, we'll talk about the Vialto series here. I do not have mine potential as I got my Resurger launcher and I prefer it personally. However, your Vialto launcher is going to have is 18% on the first potential, and it also gives you offensive PP recovery, which helps you sustain the amount of PP you're going to have throughout a fight. A lot of people prefer this to the Resurger as it is hard to sidestep with the launcher as you are so far away from combat. So unless you're actively in combat, Vialto would be the way to go, much cheaper in the grand scheme of things as well. Now, level 1, again, you start off at 18, level 2, you go to 20, and finally, you max out at 23. Same as the Forces, except that for the launcher, you're doing Vialto. Now, the main issue with these is that Forces and Vialto cannot be multi-weaponed. If you want to multi-weapon your launcher and your rifle, you are going to need 2 Resurgers, a Resurger rifle and a Resurger launcher. Now, finally, we're going to talk about the hard-hitting one. I do not have one to show you its stats because I have been unlucky. You know, that's how it works, RNG in this game. But the Straga launcher, which is currently what I want to say is the in-meta launcher. If you want to do the most damage, you would actually pick up the Straga launcher. Whether the price drops or you get lucky enough from the actual drop table, Straga starts off at 21% potency at potential 1, but it gives you a minus 10% damage reduction. This means you're going to take 10% more damage, but do 21% potency. Now, if you notice, 21% potency actually is the same amount of potency you get from your Resurger weapon at potential 3. This is why the Straga series already starts off as being one of the heaviest hitters. Now, at level 1, it starts off at 21%, 23 at level 2, and 26 at level 3. Now, the difference here is that if you actually, I don't want to advocate this for all the weapons, but I do know for a fact that if you potential for your Straga launcher, it will actually go up to 27% potency and minus 8% damage reduction. This means that you'll only be taking 8% more damage and doing 27% more potency. Now again, even without the potential 4, if you can potential 3 your Straga launcher, you'll still be doing vastly amounts of damage compared to your other weapons. This is why it is currently, in my opinion, the strongest launcher in the game that you could be obtaining. Next, we're going to be talking about the armor series that you can get. Now, me personally, I keep it to only two armors. While the Qualda armor and the Catalea armor are both good for what they do, as a ranger, in my opinion, I want to say that Vialto is going to be your best armor overall. It gives you good amounts of defense, as well as giving you just solid HP. As you can see, it gives you 14 defense at level 1 and plus 30 HP. It also comes with, I believe, a point into damage resistance. So it gives you 1% more of damage reduction. And then finally, we have our sort of glass cannon, more damagey armor. This is the new armor that comes from the Gigantrix enemies called the Giant armor. Giant armor gives you 15 defense. However, it also gives you minus stats to make you squishier. It gives you minus 20 HP, plus 10 to PP, plus 2 potency, but minus 50 resistance to all elemental conditions. However, this armor does give you, again, 2 potency. So if you manage to get a full set of this armor, that would be 6 potency and 30 PP for free, which is really good for an offensive standpoint. And it has high defense. The issue here is that you're also going to be losing 60 HP all around and have minus 150 resistance to all status ailments, which means that if anything hits you that can cause a status ailment, it will automatically proc. Now, personally, what I'm looking for as an ideal setup for my ranger is actually going to run 2 ways, depending on your playstyle. Honestly, as a launcher main, as myself, I am going to run Vialto armor. with the Straggle Launcher because I feel that Ranger's main DPS comes from them sitting still. So I would highly recommend using the Vialto armor. While if you're using the Assault Rifle is much more mobile, so it could actually benefit from the Giant armor, being that even though it reduces the resistances it has, being so mobile with the rifle and doing so much more damage is actually really helpful to it. Now we're going to move on to the Photon arts of each of the weapon series. Alrighty, so here we have the Photon art descriptions of both rifle and launcher. We're going to start off with rifle here. So the first thing we have here is Raising Shot. This is probably going to be your bread and butter for DPS when it comes to assault rifle, honestly. What it does is it fires out explosive shells that explode when they hit the enemy. If you charge them up, it will pierce through the enemy and do damage all the way through. This is really good for just a lot of DPS, because if you do not charge it up and you just shoot it out, it will do lots of damage really quickly, but also drain a lot of your PP. Next, we have Homing Darts, your absolute strongest ability when it comes to mobbing. This ability, simply just hold it down, and while you're holding it down, you want to spin your character in a 360 degrees as fast as you can. It will lock on to any enemy that it sees while you spin your character, then simply release the button and you'll fire off a bunch of bullets to every single target that you homed in on. Very exceptionally good crowd control when it comes to PSE burst areas. This ability is what actually puts Rangers up there in the crowd control abilities with Force and Tekker. Next, we have your movement ability. Blaze Shot is very useful to use whenever you need to reposition yourself and do a lot of damage. It's also helpful to proc your Blight Shot Enforcement. So if you need to reinforce your Blight round, you could shoot an enemy with this as it goes down, maybe a boss's weak spot, and then use Blaze Shot to actually quickly try to rack up the bullet count necessary to reinforce. And then finally, your weapon action, which we will get to in a more visual example later. And now, onto the launcher, we have Fallen Impact that starts first. Now, Fallen Impact, I personally do not like it, but the useful factor of it is that when you use this ability, you use it and then you immediately swap to a different ability, because as soon as you use this ability, it will just go off. And the best part about that is that you don't have to sit there and continuously use it. You launch it, and then you could swap to one of your other ones, and it will still do damage. Then here we have Fear Eraser. Fear Eraser is your #1 best DPS when it comes to a boss's down phase or a large group of mobs in a PSE burst area. Fear Eraser grounds your character to the ground while you hold it down and fires out a massive laser in front of you that uses up all your PP until completely depleted, doing damage the entire time, piercing through all enemies in sight. And then finally, we have Multi-Launch. Multi-Launch is going to be probably your second highest DPS overall. However, the best part about this is that it's very movement based. So if you need to move around, maybe you're fighting a very mobile enemy like a Bujin that just won't sit still, you can use this to lock on and just bombard him, even though he's trying to chase you down or he's moving a whole lot. And now we'll go over the weapon action for launcher as well in the visual example up next. Now, again, I just want to go over the importance real fast of what you really need to worry about when it comes to your assault rifle. This ability, while it's not a photon art, your Blight rounds is the most important ability as a main ranger. Blight rounds is a much needed support when it comes to DPS. If you'll notice going forward in the game, you may encounter bosses that constantly have a red or purple circle on them. Red means that it's just been a freshly applied Blight round, while purple means that it's been a reinforced Blight round. Now, whatever you do, you want to make sure that you're constantly Blight rounding certain segments of enemies to do more damage and to help your melee focus on that target. We'll go over this as well in the visual example up next, so let's get right to that. Alrighty, here I'm going to show you your very typical farming when you come to a PSE burst area. As you can see, I start off with homing darts to clear off the enemies. And again, as I can't stress enough, make sure that you stay with your group in PSE burst areas. Even if you're a ranger who can clear out an entire group by yourself, it will not help anyone build up PSE burst. So your main strat when it comes to the small enemies is you just spin around with homing darts, fire off a bunch of projectiles. They will do a lot of damage. And then for single enemies, you can press the Z button on keyboard. I do not know what it is on controller, but you can press the Z button to manually aim and to utilize your rising shot for just quick DPS on the enemy. Or if you even wanted to, if you wanted to move around while using it, you could even use Blaze Shot to do a lot of damage. But you're essentially going to be rotating out of those abilities, Homing Shot being your most useful when you're surrounded by a larger group of enemies, while Rising Shot and Blaze Shot being your main DPS when it comes to just single targets left behind. I personally enjoy using the manual aim myself, as it just makes it more precise when you're taking control of your character. And then again, even in this situation, you could swap to your launcher. Although launcher is a bit difficult when it comes to AoE. Roughly, you're going to be sitting in your manual aim setting, which is when you press the Z button, and you're going to be manually targeting enemies. As you can see, there's a boss that has spawned with this defense mission, so I automatically swap to my rifle, and I land a blight round on its weak spot, encouraging my allies here to focus on that round. Now, it will disappear if it's not constantly reapplied, which is why I'm going to swap to Blaze Shot here to attempt to reinforce it. Sometimes this boss is a little iffy when it comes to attempting to reinforce, so you'll need to make sure that you're constantly on top of it. It is very easy to miss Blight Round. Do not worry. If you miss all your shots of Blight Round, it is very simple to wait for the 9-second cooldown on it before it reapplies again. Now, once you have Blight Rounds on, you could actually, if you wanted to, swap to your launcher. In my personal opinion, I recommend swapping to your launcher as soon as you apply Blight Rounds when fighting bosses. Then, immediately following up with Fear Razor, which will eliminate the threat of the boss very quickly. Although, again, if an enemy is moving at a high rate, then I recommend using the multi-launch, which is just, while you're moving around, you're just firing off a volley of rockets. Very helpful against enemies that move very quickly, or when you're specifically targeting weak spots of enemies. Now, in this next little bit, I'm going to show you the actual weapon action of both of the abilities. Rifle has a more aggressive weapon action, while Launcher's weapon action is mostly used for PP recovery. So here, as you can see with Rifle, if you just press it, you'll do a dash left or right, back or forward, that you just fire bullets off. However, if you hold it, you'll actually toss out a grenade. I missed right there, but you'll toss out a grenade, which will then go on cooldown and do a lot of damage to the enemy. Now, finally, with Launcher's weapon action, whenever you throw this out, it won't really do a lot of damage, but what it will do, and why it's so useful, is you can toss it out on any enemy, it will stick to that enemy, and then you can follow up with Fear Racer to spend a lot of your PP, and then when that bomb blows up, you'll actually notice that my PP will actually self-recover itself. So you see the bomb just blew up, and I jumped at the bottom. I jumped from 50 down to 120 PP, fully recovering me. So if I had expended more PP, or been in Fear Racer still, it will actually recover my PP in the middle of combat, proving to be very useful to me in my combos. Now, in my recommendations for what weapon you should be using at any given point, I do recommend that you stick with Launcher as your main damage dealing when it comes to bossing, and using the rifle when it comes to mobbing. Now, don't get me wrong, I do want you to swap to your rifle while bossing, as that is the only way to apply Blight Rounds, and Blight Rounds is the most important ability a ranger can bring to the table when it comes to bossing. Now, Launcher, even while mobbing, can stick with using Fear Eraser. Fear Eraser, while it is more difficult to control and aim, it does have unlimited pierce, allowing you to just simply shoot through enemies and do a lot of damage. Now, while that does a lot of damage, I still do recommend using homing darts, as homing darts is just a quick alternative to just outputting a lot of AoE damage to a large amount of enemies, because you simply run into the group of enemies, hold it down, spin around, and you can hit everything in sight as long as you have enough PP for it, very quickly and effectively clearing out an entire mob. Alrighty everyone, that's my Ranger main class guide video. I hope that I answered any questions that you may have had towards the guide. I hope I explained enough of the Photon arts and the ability usage to assist you. Again, as always, if you have any more questions about anything, please leave them down in the comment section below. I do my best to answer any questions that anyone posts in the comment section to the best of my abilities, even if it requires me having to look something up. Or maybe if I didn't mention something in the video, please comment down below so that way other people can at least know about what I missed out on, so that way they're at least kept knowledgeable about the subject. Now, I do want to inform you that I don't know when the next guide video is going to be. My next one will probably have to do with Gunner or Force. As is right now, I will not be making a guide video on Tekker, as I'm still trying to get used to how Tekker works when it comes to the wand or the talisman. But of the other videos I'm thinking of making for everyone, please let me know in the comment section if y'all would like to see maybe a augment video where I go over the different augments, maybe the melee ones, range ones, tech ones, the general usage ones, and the best kind of augments to be putting on your abilities depending on which class you are, whether you're melee, range, or tech. And then I also was thinking about maybe releasing a little tip video on Gigantrix fighting, showing you the proper areas that you're supposed to be targeting and in what phases you want to be targeting what in the Gigantix fights for North, South, West, and Central Alio, as they're all different Gigantix bosses and they all have different strategies to fight with them. So if you'd like to see any of those, or if you have any questions about those, please leave them in the comments below and I will get to them. Like always, thanks for stopping by. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos here on the channel, and I'll catch you all next time. Please make sure to take care of yourself. Bye-bye.